Chapter 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Xiao Qin stood alongside his kind, their number in tens of thousands standing in a messy formation, ready for battle. He was standing in the third row or maybe fourth or fifth row, he can't figure it out since they were all lined up in a disorganized manner. Far in the distance, he could see their enemies, neatly forming a true battle line. Boasting a complete set of metal armor and towering shields, they stood in a disciplined manner, unlike his kind. He looked to his right and left and saw his kind, green skin, some brownish red and grayish brown, with humongous weapons made of anything that they can get their hands on, either self-made or looted from someone else. Xiao Qin looked at his weapon, a fine metal sword that was too short for his frame and a shield made of wood roughly held together by nails. He wanted a better shield, but he wasn't able to make or get a better one since his colleagues would always snatch away the best from anyone weaker than them, and unluckily Xiao Qin was one of the weakest. He was still young according to the age depicted by the system that accompanied his reincarnation, a system made for battle specifically. It gave him missions to accomplish and rewarded him with points which then can buy things from the system store, be it magic spells, weapons, abilities, talents, knowledge and other things. Someone or something had reincarnated him in the body of a young dying orc after a disastrous defeat. He stared at his meager 500 points and excitement welled up in him as he stared at his mission. Missions available: missions * kill 10 enemies reward. 100 points * kill 50 enemies. Reward. 500 points * kill 100 enemies reward. 1000 points * win the battle reward. 10,000 points. There was likely only a slight chance for him to accomplish the last mission, so he focused on getting more kills. He gripped his sword tightly and prepared his shield for any sudden attack, and they unleashed surely enough a barrage of arrows towards them. Xiao Qin crouched down a little with his shield angled against the trajectory of the enemy arrows. Howls of pain soon ensued after the sound of flesh being pierced and some occasional thudding sounds of arrows being deflected or blocked. The enemy archers unceremoniously continued the barrage. Xiao Qin's allies died in great numbers, and after a few seconds, the chaotic formation moved and charged towards enemy ranks. It incensed Xiao Qin on how his kind does battle. They would just charge forward towards the enemy in a mad rush, engaged in melee, and then that's it, no strategy at all, simple but sometimes effective. He soon joined the chaotic melee, scoring his first kill in the battle. He hacked at his enemies with all his strength and overpowered them with raw strength. Sometimes he would even tackle them with his shield or slam them with it and kick them away with his humongous foot. The battle progressed in utter chaos, every orc for himself, no formation at all, while their enemies confront them in groups, trapping them with their shields and stabbing them with spears or swords while they trapped them. Xiao Qin took a brief look at the battlefield, and surely enough, the enemy cavalry was charging through their flanks again like the previous battles, cutting down and trampling every orc in their path. The battle lasted for hours in favor of the enemy. Xiao Qin was preparing himself for the inevitable defeat and was inching back away from the center of the battle. The enemy mages soon began their assault after their arrival, bombarding them with spells. The orcs soon found themselves in a very tough spot as they were being bombarded with spells and arrows and being squashed by the enemy infantry in front and the enemy cavalry at their flanks. The orc commander was quickly surrounded and beheaded after mindlessly charging forward deep into enemy ranks. Xiao Qin didn't know whether this was common among orc commanders or was just some coincidence. He took part in 2 battles before and the same thing happened thrice already, their commander mindlessly charging forward, got surrounded, then killed. The orcs' number soon dwindled and the unavoidable retreat happened. Xiao Qin, being away from the center of battle, scurried away quickly as soon as he saw his kind retreat. He made use of the spell haste, which increased his running speed, which he bought from the system store for a whopping 1,500 points. He wouldn't want to be killed by the pursuing cavalry like most of his retreating companions. He saw the towering trees up ahead and charged in a mad sprint, He knew that the enemy cavalry wouldn't risk pursuing them in the forest in great numbers, for the vegetation of the forest will hinder their mobility, and they wouldn't want to go toe-to-toe with an orc alone, for it had been tested many times that only a few men can stand against them in a 1-on-1 confrontation. Crawling inside a thick bush, Xiao Chen sighed in relief as he escaped. He cared little about his companions. Every orc was on his own, survival of the fittest, or more likely the fastest. He checked his missions available missions * kill 10 enemies reward. 100 points, completed, * kill 50 enemies reward. 500 points, completed, * kill 100 enemies reward. 1000 points, completed, * win the battle reward. 10,000 points, failed. Xiao Chen grinned in satisfaction and ignored the failed mission since he had no high expectation for it to be completed, but suddenly a new mission prompt appeared. New mission * gather the surviving orcs. The higher the number of orcs gathered, the higher the reward. Xiao Chen stared at the new mission and was considering if he should do it or let it fail, since there was no penalty for failing it, unlike the missions given to him before. Quick rapid heavy steps sounded near him as he saw an orc trying to outrun 2 enemy cavalry knights. The orc was skinny and short in stature for an orc, roughly or barely 6 foot tall. His body was littered with wounds, but he kept on running, but soon tripped in a thick root of a tree. With no second thought, Xiao Chen threw his sword at the first rider, successfully killing him, and he rammed the following rider's horse with his shield. He exerted all his strength and successfully toppled the speeding horse from the right flank, sending the poor rider in the air. Crashing down hard, the rider gasped for air as the impact knocked the wind out of his lungs and his horse neighing in pain as one of its legs got broken after Xiao Chen's tackle. Sprinting forward quickly, Xiao Chen choked the rider with his muscular arms, suffocating him. The rider soon thrashed around wildly as he tried to break free from Xiao Chen's thick arms, his face turning purple and his eyes pleading for mercy, but Xiao Chen ignored it all. He just gripped the rider's throat firmly and applied more force until finally the sound of a neck being broken sounded. Xiao Chen loosened his grip and left the rider, picking up the spear that the rider wielded. He broke the rider's neck but felt no remorse at all. He got used to taking lives already long ago since he was still a human. He thrust the spear towards the noisy horse and it thrashed around wildly, but Xiao Chen just pulled out the spear and thrust it forward again and again until the horse was silent. He just brutally killed a living thing. Blood splattered everywhere, his legs, torso, and face covered in blood, making him look more menacing than ever. He stared at the skinny orc who he just saved. With his threatening aura, the skinny orc bowed down, followed by a sudden system prompt. Congratulations on acquiring your first subordinate. Unlocking Commander's function. Unlocking the Army tab. Xiao Chen got surprised but soon felt elated. He now had someone under him. He commanded the skinny orc to loot the bodies of anything useful as he started checking out the system's new function. Chapter 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. * Commander rank. Grunt Sergeant, upgradable, able to take command of a rabble, 10 orc warriors. Commander skills. Battle Commander. Novice, upgradable, 10% chance for warriors under your command to execute your given commands perfectly. Morale boost. Basic, upgradable, 5% chance that warriors under your command will fight to the death as long as you are within 10-meter radius of them. Commander's share. Basic, upgradable, for every enemy that a warrior under your command kills, receive 1 point. Army details. Trust. 65% total number of subordinates. 1 Xiao Chen soon understood what the new functions are. It is basically like the war simulation games that he got addicted to when he was young, prompting him to become a commander. What's your name? Xiao Chen asked the skinny orc that he just saved. Observing him closer, he noticed that the skinny orc had a mark on his left chest, a mark which distinguishes a pug from a warrior. Gurkhan, my chief. The skinny orc, still with his head bowed down while thumping his right fist to his left chest as a sign of respect to Xiao Chen. Arm yourself properly and follow me. Xiao Chen beckoned Gurkhan as he turned around deeper towards the forest where distinct sounds of battle are coming from. He had lived for barely a month since his reincarnation and had taken part in 3 battles already. He didn't want to take part, but the system that accompanied his reincarnation forced him to. He ignored the system missions that had penalties before and he truly suffered for it. He experienced starvation and thirst so intense that it was driving him mad. No, not the starvation and thirst from lacking of food and water, but starvation for battle, his body screaming in pain like he was being burned alive. By then Xiao Chen understood why orcs were forced to battle endlessly, because if they wouldn't, they would suffer. The feeling of hunger and thirst for food and water, orcs could endure, but the hunger and thirst of battle, they couldn't. Sometimes different orc tribes or groups would wage battle against each other just to satiate their hunger and thirst for battle. According to the words of the oldest shamans, it was the price that their race had to pay. Their previous world being destroyed by spatial storms that just suddenly emerged, destroying their ancient lands and disturbing their peaceful lives. They sought the aid of their ancestors and the surrounding spirits, to no avail. They all just vanished, and the shamans lose their magic and power. The ones that helped them, which were the less likely to lend a hand, were the frowned upon warlocks, who achieved their magic and power through demonic ways. The warlocks practiced life sacrifices and other atrocious deeds which most of the orcs disapproved, since gaining power with the aid of demons instead of their ancestors and the spirits were dishonorable. Orcs lived unrestrained, only relying on what nature gives and provides them with and never asking more than what was required, and strength gained by your hands or understanding of the shamanic ways was their path of gaining honor. The different tribes gathered all together by the call of the warlocks at the Dark Plains, the gathering spot of warlocks. There the warlocks summoned their demon masters. Colossal figures of varying features appeared before the orc race. They had dark ominous auras surrounding them, some had scales, some with thick fur like their trusted steeds and companions of orcs, the wargs, while some had skins of the same features to the orcs but in many colors. They had eyes that can make even the brave orcs uncomfortable with their gaze, some with tails like snakes and lizards, some like the wargs and the huge mountain cats. Most of them had a set of sharp teeth like the predators of the wild. They had horns on their heads and some in different areas like the shoulder and the back. The demons offered them a pact of servitude for 10 years, and then orcs, with their world slowly dying, took the offer. The demons send them to these lands of those pink skins, the humans, and the long-eared ones, the elves. Here they were commanded by the demons to wage war, and waged war, they did. The orcs, empowered by the demons' blood that they consumed to cross the demonic spatial gates, drove them into a frenzy and further strengthened their frightening might in combat, but little did they know it was also a curse to them by the demons, slowly changing them to what the demons wanted, forever their servants. But in a new world filled with natural spirits, the shamans recovered their power and learned the truth about the demons' devious plans. Many shamans embraced the fate of losing their powers as long as their race could break free from the claws of the demons. With shamans continuously sacrificing their magic and power for many generations, they finally broken the bonds that shackled them to their demon masters, but the curse of the demons' blood had long corrupted them, turning them into insatiable battle maniacs that would always go to battle till death. Xiao Chen was trying to find a way to cure this curse and sought the system's aid, and luckily the system store sells an item that can lift the curse, but it was priced at a humongous figure of 1 million points. The pink skins and long-eared ones did not know the history of the orcs, and with the difference in language, they never communicated well, and whenever they meet, they would always spill often blood than not. Xiao Chen once tried communicating with the pink skins but to no avail. They speak an unfamiliar language than what humans used to speak in his previous world. He tried English, Russian, German, French, Spanish and even his mother tongue Mandarin, but to no avail, and just nearly had his new life ended. Staring at the skinny orc behind him, Xiao Chen was at a loss for words. The orc donned on the rider's equipment, stripping the poor rider naked, only leaving behind the simple piece of loin cloth covering his private parts. Armed with a spear in one hand and a sword in the other, while being accompanied by a fully armored orc, who was a rare sight to behold, they went deeper into the woods. There Xiao Chen saw 4 enemy cavalry toying with a female orc. They tied her on with some rope to the trees and are slowly wounding her with daggers while laughing. Female orcs joined battles, but rarely, only the fiercest female orcs would. #@UN #@# EuroUN, the bulkiest of the four said, #@UN ***, the man with a fierce scowl on his face replied, then laughter ensued as they enjoy playing with the bounded female orcs busily cursing them. "Untie me and fight like an actual warrior," she screamed at them but just got ignored and earned a few more wounds. She retaliated by spitting and cursing at them. Xiao Chen couldn't understand what the humans were talking about but he didn't care, all his eyes were dead set on the mark on the female orc's right arm, a mark he only saw among the chiefs of the tribe and their descendants and the ever-respected shamans. Carefully observing the enemies in front of them, his brain went at work, figuring out a plan to kill all the enemies while ensuring the safety and life of the female orc. Considering the resources at his disposal, he soon devised a simple yet surely effective plan, but first he had to buy something from the system store for his plan to work. Chapter 3 You are listening at Novel Full.audio. With the thick cover of the surrounding vegetations, slowly but surely Gherkin made his way behind the tree where the female orc was at, his body blending among his surroundings, his skin changing and adapting like that of a chameleon. Xiao Chen readied the spears for immediate action, his thick burly right hands firmly gripping the shaft of the spear, his eyes full of concentration, aiming for the bulliest of the humans just about 20 meters away from his hiding spot. The laughter of the riders continued as they take turns slashing and poking the female orc while slowly tearing away her clothing, her rough vest made of animal skin and small skirt made out from the same material torn in different places barely covering her most private parts. Her modest breasts, threatening to break free from the confines of what remains of her vest. Xiao Chen just spent almost all of his available points, spending 300 points for a camouflage potion that lasts for 2 minutes, allowing Gherkin to stealthily approach and free the female orc, and the talent named True Aim, with the price of 1750 points, allowing Xiao Chen's aim to hit his intended target with high accuracy. There, Xiao Chen saw the ropes drop to the ground while the riders were still oblivious to what was going on, still busy laughing while enraging the female orc more, but then with a quick swoosh Xiao Chen threw the first spear towards the bulliest of them all, and with a loud thud and the sound of flesh and armor being pierced through, the unfortunate human was nailed to a tree trunk further away, his body carried by the spear's momentum, and with quick reflexes Xiao Chen threw the second spear, successfully hitting his second target on his abdomen, making him crouch down in pain while he burst out from his hiding spot with a loud shout, directing the remaining riders' attention towards him. Xiao Chen couldn't help but proudly shout his unit's motto, even though only he can understand what it means. Casting the haste spell in himself, Xiao Chen charged forward like a raging bull, ramming one of the riders and sending him flying and crashing to the trees, and with a quick glance he saw the last standing rider pounced on by the enraged female orc. The last rider suffered a painful retribution in the hands of the infuriated female orc. The female orc clawed at the helpless man with her sharp nails, tearing away chunks of flesh from his face and torso. She even tore away a piece of the man's neck with her mouth fully, using her shorter but very sharp tusks and set of teeth. Like a predator that is having a meal out of its prey, the female orc continued on tearing the hapless men into pieces with her hands and mouth while the poor man screamed in agony, making Xiao Chen feel goosebumps all over his body. The savagery of the female orc surprised and scared him. Female orcs can sometimes be more ruthless than male orcs, particularly when their dignity was tarnished or mocked upon. Staring at her, Xiao Chen finally noticed the uncanny similarities between female orcs and female elves. They were both a beauty, but the elves were more majestic and graceful, while female orcs leaned on the wild and savage nature. Their figures almost very identical, both with long ears, except orcs are of lupin ears while the elves had sharper and longer ears. Body figures almost the same, the short and sharper tusks missing and the lupin ears covered. They look like female elves, just wild and savage in nature. Xiao Chen stood rooted on the spot, watching as the female orc tortured the miserable man till the man succumbed to death. He didn't notice that Gherkin disappeared and went somewhere and they could see no shadow of him. Many thanks. The female orc finally stood and cupped her right fist to her left chest with her head bowed down, showing her gratitude to Xiao Qin. A system prompt telling him he gained an additional subordinate sounded, but Xiao Qin ignored it and just focused his gaze on the female orc. "What's your name?" Xiao Qin couldn't help but ask with his gaze fully focused on the female orc waiting for her reply. "I am known as Drigana, daughter of Dugmoor chief of the Rock Bear tribe and Dhagana daughter of Veer Khan chief of the Black Tree tribe." Xiao Chen's hunch was right, she was a royalty of the orc race, at least in the tribes that she belongs to, daughter and granddaughter of tribe chieftains. She is not someone to be messed with, she has the blood of brave and strong warriors. "I mean no disrespect, but what is my savior called?" Xiao Chen didn't know how to reply. The real identity of the body he occupied, he doesn't know, nor was there anyone who informed him. He just simply replied with his own name. Xiao Chen, Cao Ken. Drigana tried to confirm, confused by the strange words coming from Xiao Chen's mouth. "It's Xiao Chen." Xiao Chen tried to correct her, speaking more clearly and slowly for her to understand. "Cao Ken." Drigana replied again, which made Xiao Chen at a loss for words. He really can't blame her, for Orcish is literally very different from Mandarin, so he just nodded, confirming Drigana of his now new name. "Cao Ken." "Cao Ken. Cao Ken," Drigana muttered repeatedly, trying to engrave Xiao Chen's new name to his memory, but then she suddenly realized something, an old Orcish word whose meaning is something that is difficult to speak of. "You mean Cao Ken, meaning chieftain of chieftains?" Xiao Chen was dumbfounded. He didn't know that his new name had such a meaning, probably because he wasn't a real orc and didn't know of the ancient Orcish words and what they mean. "I guess so." Xiao Chen replied and just shrugged his shoulders. With the system, he can really become chieftain of chieftains as long as he gets more points and buy everything that he needs from the system store. But staring at his only remaining 50 points, his excitement dwindled down to the negatives, but he was surprised that it suddenly rose by 1 point, making his total points 51. He looked at the systems panel and surely enough, he found the reason commanders share. Basic, upgradable, for every enemy that a warrior under your command kills, receive 1 point. Gurkhan had probably killed someone since his only 2 subordinates would be him and Drigana just killed the poor man before she became his subordinate and she was currently standing in front of him. Surely enough, Gurkhan appeared from where he sent the unfortunate soldier that he tackled. "It's all done, my chief." Gurkhan bowed his head, thumping his right fist to his left chest with a sword still dripping fresh blood was on his left hand, what he used to slay the unfortunate rider. Checking his system further, he saw *army details trust. 70% total number of subordinates. 2. With everything concluded, Xiao Chen tasked Gurkhan and Drigana to loot the corpses and arm themselves while he himself picked up the things he needed, for spears, a sword and some pieces of armor that could fit his hulking frame, unlike Gurkhan whose body frame allowed him to wear the rider's armor full. They rested for a few minutes and set out once again towards wherever they could hear sounds of fighting coming from. Xiao Chen was determined to rescue as many orcs as possible for him to gain more points and raised his meager 51 points to as high as he could. Chapter 4. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Deeper into the forest, Xiao Chen's group trudged through the dense group of trees. Heavy sounds of battle were up ahead. In a clearing, dead bodies were scattered everywhere, both pink skins and orcs, and further ahead, a group of 4 orcs were resisting several human soldiers, but unlike the ones Xiao Chen encountered before, these were of the infantry. Huge rectangular towering wooden shields inlaid with iron, complete set of armor from head to toe and moving together in groups, they surrounded the group of 4 orcs. Xiao Chen observed them a bit. A huge orc, much bigger and bulkier than the 3 deceased commanders of theirs, waving around a tree trunk as a club, smashing anyone foolish enough to get within his range. Further at the back he saw an older orc, who looks frail and weak with a wooded staff decorated with a few animal bones. He was throwing jars containing liquids and powders towards the enemy. The jars' contents sometimes melt the flesh of the enemies, others making them disoriented like drunk men, turning their neat formation chaotic. Xiao Chen also spotted another female orc bravely swinging around a two-handed axe which somewhat doesn't match with her frame. She is as savage as Drigana in her actions, cleaving and pummeling anyone who dares to underestimate her prowess. A strange orc was also spotted by Xiao Chen, an orc with the same frame as Gurkhan but with thicker and bulkier arms. He was throwing anything and everything that he gets his hands on, like swords, spears, shields, pieces of armors, fallen tree branches and rocks. The strange orc was hurling things at the enemies and sometimes successfully killing someone, but his most useful deed was disrupting the enemy formations which free up space around the bulky orc. Xiao Chen led Gurkhan and Drigana behind the enemies to flank them. With spears at hand like a stretch bow, he hurled them towards the unprotected backs of the enemies, nullifying the protection of their shields. He threw all the spears in his arsenal, each spear successfully taking a life. Preparing to engage in the melee, he brought out his sword. Gurkhan and Drigana already rushed forward first when he was still throwing the spears and have already joined the fray. Casting the haste spell on himself, Xiao Chen rushed forward like a charging bison, with the tower shield in front of him and ramming through the enemy formation. With his move the enemy formation got broken, some enemies were sent flying by him and got his shield broken. He slashed with his sword and slammed enemies with a new shield that he picked up among the scattered equipment of the dead enemies, incorporating a few kicks and tackles in his attacks. The enemies got ambushed successfully and with the bulky orc rampaging around when he was freed from the encirclement, they started losing morale. A swift orc wielding two swords that they can barely hit, a fully armored orc and one that fights much like a gladiator in the arena. The enemy infantry panicked and started to run away and further gave the upper hand to the orcs. With the surroundings littered with corpses and a few wounded who are moaning in pain still awaiting death's embrace, Xiao Chen moved towards the bulky orc and his companions. Gurkhan, being his loyal follower, started clearing the battlefield, killing any enemy that hasn't succumbed to death yet, supplying Xiao Chen with much needed points. "Greetings, brave warrior, many thanks for aiding us," the old and frail-looking orc said while cupping his right fist to his chest and the bones on his staff rattled as he transferred it to his left hand while he greeted Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen returned the gesture and cupped his right fist to his chest and asked, "I am called Cao Ken, what are you called, Elder One?" he asked respectfully, as among orcs, chieftains, shamans and witch doctors are highly respected, and the old and frail-looking orc was a witch doctor, no doubt. How he fought was how witch doctors fight. They threw their harmful concoctions towards the enemies while applying their healing salves or useful concoctions to those who needed. "I am called Rakashta, as you may already guessed. I am a witch doctor. The big one over there is Galamnor, the brave female one is Eroshana my daughter, and this one is Trotthar," Rakashta said as he patted Trotthar's shoulder. "We acknowledge you as our leader as a token of gratitude since we no longer trust the deceased commander's second in command who ignored us. He just led his group away, leaving us behind to fend for ourselves," Rakashta continued. "Damn those cowards, they will face retribution eventually." Galamnor angrily stomped at the ground as he spat on the ground, showing his displeasure. Xiao Chen knew it very well. Rarely will you see orcs come to the rescue of their brethren when their own safety was threatened. "We better move fast. The enemy will come back soon and in greater numbers than before," Trotthar said, his eyes staring far towards where the enemies have retreated to. Xiao Chen then led away the group. He was in a cheerful mood since his available points now are 103 and his new total of subordinates increased from 2 to 6. Exiting the tree covers, Xiao Chen arrived at the old winding path towards the Lagrana mountains, and behind it was the land of the orcs, tribes scattered all throughout the place and where the pink-skins won't dare follow them without a huge army at least with numbers equal to or greater than the number of the orc race. The old winding path towards Lagrana mountains was also without danger since golems and other monstrosities also visited it, which was far more dangerous than orcs are to humans. Checking the surroundings for any sign of danger, Xiao Chen was at the forefront while his subordinates followed him in a group of twos since the path only allowed 2 orcs to walk side by side. One side was the mountain wall while the other, a ridge with a height that can injure or even outright kill even the strongest and toughest orc if they are dumb enough to not watch where his or her foot was stepping on. Further up ahead, Xiao Chen soon spotted a huge moving creature made of rocks. It was smashing the mountain walls with its fist, banging it with enough force that caused some boulders to fall down and block the path. The creature was over 10 feet tall, with some parts of its body covered in sharp-pointed rocks. Its legs were a huge group of rocks, probably bigger than Galamnor's 2 legs combined. Some pieces of gems were embedded in its body, reflecting the rays of the sun. "Seems like we're in for a tough fight," young one Rakashta stated the obvious, which earned him an unfriendly gaze from Drigana. "I heard golems are stronger and tougher creatures than orcs." "I will test if those words true." Galamnor spoke and readied his weapon, the tree trunk which he used as a club. He loved smashing things more than anything else. "I hope not." Trotthar can't help but mutter with a tone of helplessness as he started picking up rocks from the surroundings and piling them up together, ready to hurl them at the enemy made of rocks. Xiao Chen didn't know what to do, a golem that wasn't included in any of his memories, both from the original and his own. How do you fight a golem? He can't help but ask the 6, since he did not know of these tough creatures. "If we can immobilize and destroy its legs, it is our victory," Rakashta commented while busily rummaging around his bag, a bag made of crudely sewn together animal skins. He was sorting out which of his concoctions will work on the golem. "I'll crush those legs." Galamnor was raring to engage the still busy golem pounding its fist on the mountain wall. Xiao Chen can't help but think of Galamnor as a muscle head, like one of his men back in Huaxia. He doesn't think nor plan anything like Galamnor, just acting in his instincts, which made Xiao Chen wonder how he survived the many missions that they have undertaken. Chapter 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Slowly inching forward, with nervous but steady steps, Xiao Chen and his subordinates approached the busy golem. With hearts beating fast from nervousness or excitement like Galamnor, they moved stealthily as possible. Bang, 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 the golem continued pounding the mountain walls, still oblivious to the approaching danger. Galamnor, being a muscle-head as he was, shouted loudly and madly rushed forward as Xiao Chen stared at him in both annoyance and surprise. The golem, successfully attracted by Galamnor's shout, turned his head and stared at Xiao Chen and his group, then towards the charging Galamnor. "Oh! Customers," it said with a deep and loud voice while waving at Xiao Chen and his group who had mouths wide open in shock. The golem then looked at Galamnor, grabbed the tree trunk that was supposed to smash to its left leg with its bulky rock hand and lifted it up, and along came Galamnor, who refused to release his weapon. "Aggressive customer. No discount for you," it said while pointing a finger at Galamnor with his other hand, then picked something from behind the piled-up boulders, the result of its pounding on the mountain walls. Xiao Chen stared in disbelief. He was speechless and just stared at the golem, still busy rummaging through the boulders looking for something, but soon came to his senses, then turned to look at his companions and discovered their also shocked expressions. Was this supposed to happen? He can't help but ask. He was confused about what was happening. "Ahem. This is a first," Rakashta said, shrugged his shoulders and stored the readied concoctions inside his crudely made bag while the others sighed in relief. They sighed in relief, perhaps because the expected battle didn't occur, nor do they want it to occur. Trotthar sat on the ground, Drigana sheathed her swords on their scabbard on her back, Eroshana lowered her enormous axe, and Gurkhan just stood in a place, unsure of what to do or what to say. "Friends. Customers. Come see my wares. See anything you like. I give discount to everyone. Except for this 1 inch." The golem spoke in broken Orcish language, pausing and continuing after a few words like he was thinking of what are the words to say next, then brought forward a box made of logs, tied in a square-ish shape by vines containing different items, and pointing a finger at Galamnor, telling everyone that Galamnor won't be having any discount. The square-ish box contained many things, like ores, fruits, rocks, weapons and other things. Xiao Chen and his group continued being speechless. What is this, a merchant golem? Xiao Chen thought, staring dumbly at the still excited golem. A spirit crystal. A Thravamore. A Dargan skin. A Hyrcan stone. Rakashta named a few of the wares that the golem displayed in a surprised tone. Are these things precious or rare? Xiaoqin can't help but curiously ask. He didn't know what these things were or what were their uses, but Rakashta's tone and his very own curiosity prompted him to ask. Well, a spirit crystal is something only found deep in the undergrounds with an abundance of spiritual energy, useful to shamans in increasing their mana. The Thravamore is the hardest one to find since it only exists near rivers of fire and only in small quantities. It can be used to forge weapons and armors that are more durable and resilient than any other metal. Even the Pinkskins think so. Their highest chieftain had a weapon made of such or which he treasured dearly, even sacrificing great numbers of his army once just to recover his sword from the Worgen tribe who looted it from his eldest son's corpse. The Dargan is one of the strongest and feared predator of Lagrana Mountains, armed with a sharp set of teeth, claws and skin so thick that a full blow of sword from an orc won't penetrate its thick skin, and the Hyrcan stone, a useful stone which can be ground to dust and mixed with several herbs to make a good healing salve. Rakashta explained in details as he stared dumbfounded at the strange golem. With those details, Xiaoqin now knew that these wares were rare and precious. Glad you know my goods, the golem said while smiling sheepishly but obviously proud, since his parents and kind laughed at his crazy deeds and dreams to become a merchant, which seemed unrealistic to them since no creature with a good mind will do business with a talking piece of huge rock, much less communicate with one. Golems are creatures that tend to destroy things with their innate talents and abilities and are very hostile to any other creatures besides their own kind, earning them a poor reputation. A merchant golem. That's odd, Drigana can't help but mutter. She had never seen or encountered one and, according to the words of the elders, this golem is indeed very different from his kind. My parents, brothers and brethren laughed at me wanting to be a merchant, that's why I ran away from home. I want to prove to them I can be a merchant, a successful one-inch, the golem said with a solemn tone while putting down the tree trunk club along with its wielder, who refused to let it go. Ugh! Strong rock creature, Galamnor sulked in a corner, unhappy that his strength, which he was proud of, was not worth a thing to the golem. What can we use to buy your wares? Xiaoqin asked the golem. He was interested in the golem's wares and wanted to get his hands on them, especially that Thravamore which he wanted to use to forge a personal weapon. The golem had a hard time determining what to sell his wares for, but then just decided that the human money will do for his first transaction or an exchange of items of the same value. Gold coins. Or items of the same value will do. The golem then pointed at Gurkhan's attire and smiled as innocently as possible, making Xiaoqin think the golem was but a child. That's why it wasn't as aggressive as they expected it to be. Xiaoqin then was glad that he looted some pouches of gold coins from the enemies that he had slain. He had 2 pouches filled to the brim with human coins, gold, silver and copper, which are more many than the first 2. He then unfastened the pouches on his waist as the coins made almost inaudible chinking sounds as Xiaoqin waved them in front of the golem. Will these coins suffice? Xiaoqin asked. He didn't know how much the golem priced his wares. He prayed silently for his coins to be adequate to buy the golem's rare items. How many coins do you have? The golem made a questioning look as he stared at the pouches of coins, still very excited about making his first transaction. Xiaoqin was dumbfounded. He opened one of the pouches and gave the other to Rakashta to count. After counting the total number of coins, they had the last count of 13 gold coins, 320.4 silver coins and 4,670.8 copper coins. How much for these? Xiaoqin picked the items mentioned and explained by Rakashta and didn't bother checking out the other common wares, which were skins of other animals, strange-looking stones, or the many kinds of plants, or maybe just common weeds collected by the golem. Ugh! How much do you offer? The golem asked Xiaoqin, making him speechless. Since human coins are useless in the orc community, Xiaoqin just offered all the coins in his possession for the golem's wares. The golem then proudly declared. I, Hakar, will bring you more good items in the future. With the successful transaction, Xiao Chen and his group proceeded forward with the aid of Hakar, clearing the path of the boulders, then bade them goodbye as it continued to pound on the mountain walls when Xiao Chen and his group were already far enough not to be affected by his actions. Chapter 6. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. After encountering Hakar, the odd merchant golem, Xiao Chen and his companions pressed forward deeper into the Lagrana mountains, going through the old and hidden path of the orcs, which the pink skins could never find since it was pretty much not considered a path. Thick and thorny vines of the vicar plants covered the entire path. A simple prick of its poisonous thorns can cause a man to experience a severe fever, which often than not kills the suffering person. Lucky for the orcs, they are immune to the vicar plant's poison. Orc shamans of the past planted many vicar plants to serve as a camouflage to every path they had made back and forth in the pinkskins' lands. Through the vicar plants Rakashta led the way, as he was more knowledgeable about the maze paths of the vicar plants. The path wasn't just simply covered by the poisonous plants, but they also filled it with traps and confusing turns that lead anyone foolish enough to enter without a guide around in circles, trapping them within the maze of poisonous vines. Mages also are useless against the vicar plants since they absorb magic and release a sweet scent in retaliation that is as poisonous as its thorns, and no one is foolish enough to clear them like common weeds. Only the orcs can touch them and clear a way for a path. Rakashta led them through the maze of vicar plants for almost an entire day. After exiting, there laid the vast lands of the orcs, huge expanse of barren lands with scarce covers of green, towering mountains that served as natural barriers and sometimes hid precious gems or ores. Camping near the Gardam River, the only river that runs through the barren lands, Xiao Chen and his companions rested, roasting an unlucky enormous pair of boars that they found drinking from the river. The long-awaited system prompt for a completed mission finally sounded. ENV missions available. Missions: gather the surviving orcs. Completed. The higher the number of orcs gathered, the higher the reward, tallying total number of orcs. Analyzing gathered orcs. Computing final reward. Gurkhan Trust. 90% analysis. A nimble and stealthy orc, useful as a scout or an assassin. Talents: highly loyal, will execute your commands and put your safety first before his own. Sleek and slim, body frame allows a quick change of direction and fast movements. Executioner, have a knack for clearing the battlefield of wounded enemy survivors without mercy. Abilities: rapid steps, able to burst in speed at crucial moments. Drigana Trust. 80% analysis. A savage female orc, proficient in dual-wielding swords, nimble enough to evade enemy strikes but best at becoming a shaman or a mage with her huge mana pool. Talents: magic touch, blessed with huge mana pool. Opportunist, able to seize enemies' mistakes and eliminate them. Ability: summons unknown creatures. Bloody vengeance, will always seek payment for wrongdoings. Blood for blood. Trothar Trust. 73% analysis. Huge burly powerful arms suited for throwing things, perfectly work as a hurler. Talents: true aim, able to hit intended targets with high accuracy. Relentless, able to maintain a rain of projectiles for enemies with enough ammunition. Abilities: heavy barrage, thrown projectiles will cause heavier impact than normal. Clear eyes, eyesight, can see 3 times further than other orcs. Galamnor Trust. 87% analysis, a muscle head. Talent: strong body, able to exert more strength than other orcs. Muscle brain, no need to think, just act unfazed, feels no fear. Enemies are all the same to him, even they are bigger, faster or in great numbers. They are all just opponents to prove his strength and prowess. Abilities: blunt strike, able to deal heavy and effective blows with blunt weapons. Aroshana Trust. 58% analysis. Savage and cruel, the more blood she sees, the more savage she becomes, a natural berserker. Talents: momentum master, able to wield heavy weapons effectively by using the momentum of each swing. Silent one, won't speak a word if unnecessary. Cautious, won't trust anyone easily. Abilities: insanity thrills, state of mind, fully focuses on combat and nothing else. Personality shift, sheds all pretense and brings out her true nature in combat. Rakash the Trust. 81% analysis. Don't judge a book by its cover. Looks weak because of his age but can exert enough strength to carry a horse, a knowledgeable orc about natural medicines and poisons. Talents clear mind, able to counter the demon's corruption with just his state of mind poison gift, able to create deadly poisons but sometimes puts his own safety in jeopardy because of it natural herbalist, able to create effective medicines from natural herbs curious mind, ever curious mind to discover and create new things and most of the time, his curiosity puts him in danger calm and steady, no matter how perilous the situation is, never panics or becomes nervous poison. Resistance, able to resist certain poisons that are supposed to kill normal orcs abilities accurate throw, often hits the intended target healing touch, able to use spiritual energy to heal wounds by just a touch Shao Chen then checked his own information to compare it with his subordinates, then checked the other system functions and tabs after receiving his reward for the mission. A whooping 2,150 points further increasing his total points to 2,253 points. Shao Chen Grunt Sergeant Analysis. A brilliant strategist and planner, suitable for leading roles, strict but friendly talents. Odd strategist, able to come up with sometimes odd but very effective strategies great planner, draw up plans that are less likely to fail as long as they followed a true aim, able to hit intended target with high accuracy abilities haste, able to cast haste spell on himself or others hand-to-hand combat, able effectively eliminate enemies with bare hands commander rank. Grunt Sergeant, upgradable, able to take command of a rabble, 10 orc warriors, commander skills battle commander. Novice, upgradable, 10% chance for warriors under your command to execute your given commands perfectly morale boost. Basic, upgradable, 5% chance that warriors under your command will fight to the death as long as you are within 10-meter radius of them. Commander's share. Basic, upgradable, for every enemy that a warrior under your command kills, receive 1 point. Asterisk Army Details Trust. 78% total number of subordinates. 6 Knowledge Orcish language, able to speak Orcish and understand Orcish unarmed combat, know how to beat opponents bare-handed. Firearms proficiency, know how to operate and use every known firearm. Explosive expert, know how to make use of explosives effectively. Battery commander, effective commander of artillery. Advanced civilization, know of advanced civilization and their technologies. Mandarin, able to speak and understand Mandarin English, able to speak and understand English Russian, able to speak and understand Russian German, able to speak and understand Deutsch French, able to speak and understand French Spanish, able to speak and understand Castilian. He had a long list of knowledge mostly from his previous world, which he was too lazy to read through. He could finally learn about the talents and abilities of his subordinates, their trust in him and also their natures. The one thing though that was basically obvious was Galam Nor, simply a muscle head. Looking at Drigana, Shao Chen can't figure her out. She had huge mana pool but displayed no form of magic and fought much like a warrior. He didn't know if Drigana knew of her gift for magic or something is obstructing her from using and displaying it. The group needed enough rest since the land of the orcs is also without danger. They can be killed by their brethren who succumb to the madness of the demon's curse or encounter one of the warlocks who loves nothing but appease their demon masters with a live sacrifice in exchange for power. Orcs are divided into many tribes. Alliances between tribes through a pact weren't uncommon, but tribal wars were more many than peace pacts. This is one thing that Shao Chen couldn't understand. Why would they fight amongst themselves? Why not just gather together in huge numbers and invade and attack the ones they call pinkskins or the long-eared ones? He had a hunch that it might have something to do with the chieftain's personal gains and prestige, or maybe something else. Chapter 7 You are listening at novelfull.audio. Opening his eyes, Shao Chen checked his surroundings. After a good night's rest, he felt refreshed. Sitting a few feet away was Gurkhan, standing guard for any approaching danger. The frosty morning breeze assaulted Shao Chen's senses, which made him shiver a bit. Mist was covering most of the Gardam River, hiding it from sight, like a shy maiden. "You're awake, my chief," Gurkhan greeted Shao Chen and continued to be on the watch. It's only a few moments before dawn but the sky was still dark and the sparkling gems of the sky are still twinkling brightly. He. Xiao Chen and Gurkhan stared at each other and muttered the same words exactly at the same time, Balfurs. They both exclaimed and quickly Gurkhan alerted the others, especially the sleepy-head Galamnor who was snoring so loudly that Xiao Chen had a hard time trying to go to sleep. Balfurs! Wake up! Balfurs are approaching us! Gurkhan yelled at the others while Xiao Chen armed himself with a shield and spear, ready to engage the first opponent that jumps out of the mist. The strange, laughing howls of the Balfurs filled the place. Rakash the rummaged through his bag to find something to use against the strange laughing creatures. Trotthar went to his piled-up rocks which he gathered last night before going to sleep, Eroshana and Drigana brandishing their weapons and Gurkhan running back beside Xiao Chen to prepare for an engagement after giving the sleepy-head Galamnor a good kick to the head and successfully waking up the slumbering orc. A sudden system prompt notified Xiao Chen of a new missions available missions * kill 10 Balfurs reward. 100 points * kill 50 Balfurs reward. 500 points * repel the Balfurs with none of your subordinates dying reward. 500 points * kill the Balfur queen reward. 2000 points with a quick swoosh a black creature jumped out from the mist pouncing on Xiao Chen, claws and fangs ready to inflict pain but with quick reflexes he slammed the shield onto the creature's face knocking it down to the ground and quickly impaling it with the spear. Looking at it, it was a creature much like the wargs, a wolf-like body, sharp claws and fangs, furry body and bushy tail. They appear to be normal wolves except for those two pairs of bloody red glowing eyes and the protruding spikes on its back like that of huge predatory lizards. After successfully eliminating the first one, 2 more jumped out of the mist followed by 4, then many more that Xiao Chen had no time to count them all. He was busy deflecting the claws and fangs of the Balfurs with his shield and kicking them away with enough force, sending them reeling back in pain or stabbed them with the spear. He was very careful though since Balfurs also have a nasty bite that can severely injure him. To his right, the Balfurs had a hard time landing a good strike at Gurkhan since he was covered in armor from head to toe and the exposed parts of his body that the undersized armor can't cover was heavily guarded by him, while a rain of rocks were hurled by Trotthar at the Balfurs, disorienting, knocking out and outright killing them while Eroshana and Drigana protected his sides and beside him stood Rakashta still rummaging through his bag looking for something. With a loud shout, Galamnor charged forward towards the group of Balfurs, swinging his weapon of choice the tree trunk and swatting away 4 Balfurs and sent them flying back into the mist. Xiao Chen wasn't sure if those Balfurs are still alive and conscious. With Galamnor joining the front line, he had an easier time dealing with the Balfurs but he had to be very careful though of Galamnor's weapon since he was swinging it around wildly and many times Xiao Chen had to backpedal, crouched down and lean away to avoid being sent flying by Galamnor. Musclehead. Watch your swings. You'll kill the chief. Gurkhan snarled at Galamnor after seeing Xiao Chen backpedal away from the edge of the tree trunk that Galamnor wielded, making him go off balanced. Galamnor stared at Xiao Chen awkwardly, trying to regain his footing as he stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding the tree trunk. Apologies, my chief, Galamnor apologized, bowing his head, and got quickly pounced on by 2 Balfurs. Focus your attention on the enemy and watch where you swing your weapon, Xiao Chen yelled at him as he distanced himself away from Galamnor. Dealing with the Balfurs while monitoring Galamnor's weapon is taxing on him. Ah! Got it! Rakashta exclaimed and threw sealed small clay pots at the Balfurs. The clay pots easily shattered upon impact and released a strange scent, a scent like old wood and rotting meat mixed with the sweet scent of flowers. The Balfurs sniffed and started their strange laughing howls, then backed away, still snarling at Xiao Chen and his group in reluctance. Phew! Xiao Chen sighed and looked at Rakashta who was smiling proudly as he had successfully driven away the Balfurs. The group sustained a few wounds here and there but easily treatable with Rakashta's help. Ugh! Dargan scent, Galamnor muttered as he sniffed the new scent in the air and cautiously paced around, looking for something. That's Rakashta's doing. Idiot, Gurkhan said as he slapped Galamnor's head with his sword and proceeding forward into the mist to finish off any still breathing Balfurs. Xiao Chen was left speechless. It seems Gurkhan wasn't afraid of the hulking figure of Galam Nor and stared at him in surprise. He himself doesn't have a wish of entangling with Galam Nor, the muscle head. Ugh! Galam Nor scratched the back of his head, unsure of what happened, but then grinned foolishly as he stared at the scattered corpses of the Balfour. After just a few moments Gurkhan came running back, panicking and yelling, "The Balfours are back," and behind him was a vast group of Balfours, led by a much bigger one. It had the same physical features as the other Balfours except for the addition of the two pair of goat-looking horns on its head. It snarled at them, showing its razor-sharp fangs that gleamed with the early rays of the rising sun. "A Balfour queen," Rakashta muttered as he stared at the bigger Balfour. It was now clear why the Balfours came back quickly, since with a Balfour queen among them, even a Dargan would have to think twice before confronting them. Surely enough, the Balfours pounced on Xiao Chen and his group, fiercer and more aggressive than before, even applying a little strategy by trying to flank them. Taking a quick look behind, Xiao Chen saw Eroshana going wild among the Balfours, swinging around her huge axe and spinning along with the momentum and swinging it back around to strike at another target. She was like a spinning top, and watching her movements made Xiao Chen felt dizzy. Retracting his gaze at her, Xiao Chen checked on the others. Drigana was busy fending off Balfours with her two swords, while Trotdar and Rakashta supported her from behind, throwing rocks and crazy concoctions at them. "Come!" Galam Nor taunted the Balfour queen by beckoning her with his hands, and with a quick pounce the Balfour queen pinned him down to the ground. "Ugh! Heavy," he grunted as he fends off the Balfour queen's fangs and claws with his weapon, but suffered some deep wounds. "Idiot," Gurkhan commented by the side, but moved to help the pinned-down musclehead, but was engaged by 6 Balfours, denying him from getting near the Balfour queen. Casting the haste spell on himself, Xiao Chen then sprinted forward, his shield in front of him, and rammed the Balfour queen and toppled it away from Galam Nor, and with a quick stab, he wounded the Balfour queen, but it retreated quickly with a swift jump and only sustained shallow wound. "Gather together," Xiao Chen bellowed as the laughing howls of the Balfours were too noisy to make simple conversation audible. Gathering together, Xiao Chen and his group retreated backwards towards the river banks, denying the Balfours access to their rear. "Galam Nor, try to pin down the big one, even just for a moment. Rakashta, do you have some fast-acting poison in your bag?" Xiao Chen rapidly said as he braced for impact, deflecting the Balfours with his shield, since Galam Nor can't swing around his weapon with them bunched up together and can only swing it downward, smashing any unlucky Balfour that aren't quick enough to avoid his lethal strikes. "Here, be careful not to smudge it on your wounds," Rakashta cautioned Xiao Chen as he handed over a pot filled with a black paste that had a pungent odor. Trotdar continued bombarding the Balfours with the scattered rocks in the river banks, while Eroshana and Drigana covered the sides. Covering his spearhead with the poisonous paste, Xiao Chen signaled Galam Nor to move forward and try to pin down the Balfour queen, and with a loud shout the hulking orc bravely charged forward, knocking away the Balfours in his path with massive swings, while Xiao Chen prepared himself for the right moment. Chapter 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dauntless and reckless, Galam Nor smashed the Balfour queen, but it evaded jumping backwards and started its laughing howls, like it was taunting Galam Nor. Galam Nor, being Galam Nor, shouted his lungs out and charged forward and lunged at the Balfour queen. The two then were entangled together, Galam Nor pounding with his fist and biting with his mouth, while the Balfour queen retaliated by clawing and biting him. They were rolling around in the ground. There was no clear winner. Sometimes the Balfour queen would be on top, while other times Galam Nor. The other Balfours were kept occupied by Xiao Chen and the others, with the spear ready to strike at the most opportune time in his hands. Xiao Chen patiently waited, only deflecting the Balfours with his shield, strong kicks, and sometimes striking with the shaft and the end spike, never using the spearhead since it was covered in poison intended for the Balfour queen. Galam Nor was already at a terrible condition, with many deep wounds all over his body. He was currently being pinned down by the Balfour queen and was directing the Balfour queen's fangs away from his vital spots by taking hold of its upper and lower jaws. Gurkhan successfully sneaked behind the Balfour queen and impaled its left hind leg to the ground and pinning it to the ground, robbing it of its mobility, but was sent tumbling away by the furious Balfour Queen. The other Balfours surrounded their leader, protecting it from anyone denying them the chance to seize its immobility. Galamnor, raised her up, Shao Chen shouted, which Galamnor quickly obliged to, gripping the Balfour Queen's snout with both hands and with all his remaining strength, he raised the Balfour Queen's upper body, high enough for Shao Chen to have a shot. With the presented chance, Shao Chen raised the spear to his eye level, his arm feeling heavy by the weight of the situation. Arching his back a bit, he released the spear with all his strength. His aim remained true and steady, but a Balfour quickly tried to intercept his thrown spear. "Take this!" Eroshana suddenly yelled. She was bloody all over, and it was unknown if it was her own or from his victims, and her eyes started glowing red almost like the Balfours and spun round and round with her enormous axe gaining momentum. With a quick swoosh, the huge axe spinning wildly came flying towards the intercepting Balfour, and Eroshana was thrown backwards, stumbling to regain her balance, probably dizzy after executing such rapid quick spins. Right on target, the huge axe cleaved through the Balfour, almost bisecting it into two, and dropped it to the ground, still twitching but quickly became motionless with the huge axe embedded deep in its stomach. The huge axe cleaved through its mouth, separating it until its stomach area. The Balfour Queen yelped in pain as the thrown spear with poison by Shao Chen deeply embedded itself on its chest. The Balfour Queen reeled back and yelped in pain, thrashing around, and successfully escaped Galamnor's grasp and freed its hind leg from impalement, but sustained heavy wounds on that leg, making it limp away. The Balfour Queen continued thrashing around, snarling, then yelping in pain as the poison quickly took effect. Its thrashing decimated some of its brethren and scared them away. There was a wide clearing around it as it continued in its death throes. With the Balfour Queen dead and the still lingering Dargon scent, the surviving Balfours scurried away in different directions. Shao Chen and his group finally relaxed a bit. Their body was in the state of exhaustion as they were constantly on the alert and on the move while engaging the Balfours. Galamnor suffered such heavy injuries that he had a hard time trying to sit up, his wounds bleeding heavily, but he was smiling in satisfaction that he got to successfully win against a Balfour Queen even with the help of Shao Chen and the others. The Balfours did not also spare Rakashta, Trotthar, Drigana and Eroshana. They sustained many deep wounds but will live through it. Gurkhan also woke up after being sent flying by the Balfour Queen. He was lucky since armor covered him and only suffered minor wounds, but the chest area of his armor caved in, credit of the Balfour Queen's attack. Shao Chen stared at his subordinate smiling, and they too smiled back even though they could barely lift a muscle because of exhaustion. The glaring sun was already at its peak, and the heat it made them feel added more pain to their sustained wounds. Suddenly dark fog started approaching them, and there in the middle was a silhouette of a creature. The silhouette was in the shape like Rakashta, who was slightly hunchback with which seemed to be a staff on his right hand, then yelled angrily at them with a very creepy voice, a voice of a child, mixed with that of an old man, mixed with a woman and many other voices. It was like a cacophony of voices. It was terrible to the ears. "What have you done to my precious? Oh! My poor babies!" The creature finally emerged and revealed itself as it knelt down beside the ferocious yet now dead Balfour Queen. It was an orc. A frail-looking old orc much like Rakashta, but his skin had many cracks like that of the ground that suffered too much drought or like that of cracking city walls. It had spikes on its back like the Balfours along with their bloody red glowing eyes, but he only had a pair of eyes, unlike the Balfours who had an extra pair. "Careful, chief, that's a warlock," Gurkhan informed Shao Chen and stood in front of him, trying to protect him from harm with his own body as the shield. The warlock continued to mutter inaudible words. It was mourning the dead Balfours, but with a quick movement, the warlock stood up and muttered an incantation in a foreign language. A magic circle quickly forming up in front of his left hand, and suddenly a pillar made of rocks rose rapidly, sending the hapless Gurkhan into the air, then disappeared quickly, making the poor orc crash to the ground heavily, knocking the air out of his lungs. Gurkhan tried to get up, but blood suddenly rushed to his mouth and he vomited blood and finally lost consciousness. Galamnor was the next who wanted to stand up, and with trembling legs he got on his feet shouting loudly, then charged towards the warlock. Raw. The warlock simply responded by casting another spell, but this time a loud thundering sound filled the place and an out-of-place lightning bolt struck Galamnor, which he successfully defended with his tree trunk at the last second. His weapon of choice splintering to pieces and was sent flying backwards, his chest charred black and smoke was rising from it. A huge strong wind swept Rakashta, Trotthar, Eroshana and Drigana, throwing them high in the air before quickly disappearing and plunging them towards the river. Oh, come on. That's cheating. Xiao Chen whined as he prepared to charge at the warlock, but an unseen force strangled him and lifted him up by the neck towards the warlock who was busy making inaudible sounds. Chief! Drigana shouted and suddenly her eyes started shining with bluish-white light. Her eyes were nowhere to be seen, only pure bluish-white light, even her palms shone in the same color and an ominous and overwhelming presence filled the place. A huge summoning circle, shining with a dangerous glint of red and black, started forming. It had a diameter of almost 40 feet. The warlock was overwhelmed by the ominous presence and released Xiao Chen, who greedily inhaled much-needed air. The warlock was trembling in fear as he stared at the giant summoning circle. Drigana near the river bank started screaming in pain as she clutched her head. The ominous and overwhelming presence disappeared like it never happened. Along with it was the gigantic summoning circle. Insolence! You dare scare the great warlock Rakashad? I'll devour your soul and put that huge mana pool to good use. Ha ha ha. The warlock angrily roared as he made use of the unseen force again to grasp Drigana by the neck and levitated her towards him. Arg, Ra, Eroshana suddenly screamed and sprinted forward towards the warlock, her eyes now glowing fully red, glowing more intensely than the Balfour Queen. Her facial expression was so twisted and scary that Xiao Chen felt he was staring at a demon. What a surprise, a demon's vessel, too bad. You, just a vessel and not the real one. The warlock mocked Eroshana and cast a spell and nullifying Eroshana's empowered state, making her fall to the ground motionless like a stringed puppet having its strings suddenly cut. Now. Time to devour you. Ha ha ha. The warlock chuckled as Drigana was only about 5 feet away from him, struggling to free herself from the invisible force grasping her by the neck, her face turning a shade of purple but barely noticeable with her reddish-brown skin color. Devour this mother ****. Xiao Chen shouted from behind him and threw a mixture of reddish and brown powder towards the warlock's face. Arg! My eyes! Rakashad shouted as he was blinded by the stinging and burning sensation that was on his eyes. Tears came pouring out uncontrollably from his eyes, his nose dripping snot and his face was full of sweat. Xiao Chen slashed the warlock's left arm with his spear which tore it away crudely. He tore away the warlock's left arm as revenge for nearly choking him to unconsciousness with his strange invisible force. What sorcery is this? Rakashad howled in pain as he clutched what was left of his left arm and closing his eyes shut in hopes of getting rid of the burning sensation upon them, caused by the powder that Xiao Chen threw at him. Xiao Chen began whacking Rakashad's body with his spear with all the strength that he could muster, tearing the blinded warlock limb by limb. It's no sorcery. It's just chili powder, dumbass. Xiao Chen spat in the warlock's direction, then plopped down as his adrenaline rush settled down and the effect of the skill iron will faded away, which removed the sensation of fatigue from his body and gave him the energy to whack Rakashad to pieces for half a minute. He just spent a whooping 5,300 points to defeat the powerful warlock, 5,250 points to buy the iron will skill and 50 points for the chili powder. Missions available. Missions * kill Rakashad, completed, reward. 10,000 points * kill 10 Balfours, completed, reward. 100 points * kill 50 Balfours, completed, reward. 500 points * repel the Balfours with none of your subordinates dying, completed, reward. 500 points * kill the Balfour Queen, completed, reward. 2,000 points. He spent 5,300 points to kill the overpowered warlock Rakshad and profiting 4,700 points, and now his total number of points is 10,053. Chapter 9. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. The ground was littered with the corpses of the Bulfurs. Some had deep slashes, some stabbed wounds, but the most unfortunate ones were smashed to piles of crushed meat, unrecognizable. The thick scent of metal permeates the air as the surroundings were painted red with blood. The warlock Rakshad, or what remains of him, was releasing a foul odor like that of rotting meat, much stronger than the replicated scent of a Dargon by Rakshasa. Far in the distance, Shao Chen spotted a thick cloud of dust that massive rapid movements of many creatures can only cause. Looking around, he saw his companions scattered around, all incapable of combat. Gurkhan still unconscious, and the armor he was proud of was now dented in many places and had many parts missing. A few places away from Gurkhan's unconscious body was Galamnor, still knocked out by the lightning bolt that just struck him, and his chest was releasing a burnt meat odor, his wounds still bleeding. Behind him, Shao Chen stared at the struggling Eroshana, who somehow lost all her strength. She was feebly trying to raise herself up with her arms, but had no strength to do so and just kept grunting helplessly. And Drigana, only a few feet away from him, had already lost consciousness. Shao Chen was unsure if she lost consciousness because of the lack of air, her fatigue, or something else. In the river banks, Rakshasa and Trotthar were supporting each other. They might have suffered some serious injuries because of the awkward way that they moved. Shao Chen was the only one who can put up resistance, albeit only a very weak one. Limping forward towards the now dead Bulfur Queen, he retrieved his spear while grasping what remained of his shield. His vision was now being hazy, a sign that his body was almost at its limit before succumbing to exhaustion. He stood as straight as he can be, the remains of his shield grasped tightly on his left while his right loosely clutching the spear shaft from multiple options of wielding the spear. He finally glimpsed clearly those causing the massive cloud of dusts. They were orcs, armed with basic weapons. In the very front of the charging crowd were 5 orcs riding wargs. Must be the leaders, Shao Chen thought. Fearless and alert, Shao Chen stood in front of them. He wasn't scared, he had the system to rely on. If things get out of hand, he'll just sacrifice his 10,000 points to get one powerful spell scroll from the system store to wipe them out, if they show hostile intentions. The charging crowd of orcs finally slowed down and came to a halt, only a few paces away from where Shao Chen was standing at. The one who seemed to be the true leader of the group looked around the surroundings. His gaze didn't linger long on the Bulfur Queen nor the Bulfurs, but his gaze suddenly stopped and focused on the Rakshad's body, or what remains of it, then checked on Shao Chen and his companions who were scattered around. Shao Chen was on high alert, ready to take action quickly. The leading orc suddenly dismounted from his warg and quickly followed by his companions. Honor had been restored. By my father's name and my clan's honor. We the Archon clan now belong to you till we deem you unworthy to lead us. The leading orc bellowed with a loud voice, enough for all his following men to hear, and cupped his fist to his left chest, then quickly followed by his group, all with their heads bowed down. Shao Chen stared at them dumbly. The group should be around 200 to 400, and now they are all for him to command. Congratulations on being recognized as a chieftain. Unlocking the Lord's tab and functions, Shao Chen was surprised and excited, and his nerves relaxed and his exhaustion finally took hold of him. His vision turned dark and finally lost consciousness, falling backwards to the hard ground with a soft thud. Chief! The worried shouts of his old and new companions were the last thing he heard before everything went dark. Regaining consciousness, he took a glimpse around and saw his old companions all laid around him. They were in a moving cart pulled by a beast of burden. How are you feeling? Rakshasa questioned while Eroshana laid down beside him, still weak and unwell, and beside her was the still unconscious Drigana. What happened to them? Shao Chen pointed a finger at the only females of the group. He was worried about their condition and well-being. They are his subordinates, after all, and they are his responsibility. Ugh. How should I say this? My daughter Eroshana tapped on the demonic power that was forced on her by an old warlock, and by using it, she is now experiencing its consequence. Drigana, on the other hand, is simply experiencing mana bite, commonly experienced by shamans and pink-skinned mages after overdrawing their mana or failing to execute a spell successfully, Rakashta explained as he pitifully looked at hapless two females, while also rubbing his left leg, which was a bit displaced after falling hard. The idiot suffered more, actually. His chest was burnt and had some broken ribs, some of his wounds were too deep, but with Rakashta's and the Archon shamans working together, they managed to save that fool's life. Gurkhan butted in as he pointed a finger at the still unconscious Galamnor. Shao Chen turned his head and looked at Gurkhan, who now had taken off most of his armor, only leaving behind the helmet and the caved-in chest piece which was stuck on him. Well, he will live. A true warrior's scars are something to boast of. Trotdar chimed in as he patted his wounds covered in green medicinal paste and, grinning proudly, and lifted his right hand fully covered in layers of cloth. Scars are often proofs of bravery and honor, Rakashta said as he lovingly caressed her daughter's cheeks. Shao Chen then focused his attention on the additional features of the system, the newly emerged Lord's Tab, and inspected it. Lord's Tab title /S, Chieftain of the Archon clan territory. None total population. 637 subjects loyalty. 93%. This was the general outlook of the extra feature, with other grayed out and inaccessible things like the management parts and other things like resources available, technological level, and many other things. A warg rider, the one that Shao Chen recognized as the leader, rode beside the cart and greeted Shao Chen and his companions with the customary cupping of his right fist to his left chest and bowing his head a little. Greetings, my chief and brave warriors. I am called Sak Baron, son of Erat and previous chieftain of the Archon clan, and momentary the chieftain until we perform the rite of succession to ceremoniously transfer the leadership to you, he said as he kept his warg at the same pace as the cart, bowing his head lower at Shao Chen. Surprised a little, Shao Chen took a quick glance at Sakharin and his warg. Sakharin was bigger and bulkier than Shao Chen, but smaller compared to Galamnor and only almost as tall as Gurkhan. He had a battle axe strapped on his back by a piece of coarse cloth, and under him was his warg. The warg was more pleasant looking than the Bulfurs. They are almost like normal wolves except way bigger and had sharper canines jutting out their mouth and soft fur in different colors. Sakharin's warg was in black color mixed with white. Sakharin introduced his warg after Shao Chen took a brief look at her. To an orc, being recognized by a warg was a prestigious event. Since wargs only recognize orcs who are worthy of them. Her name is Black Wind, my trusted partner in a hunt or battle. She had saved my life many times before. Shao Chen's gaze lingered on Black Wind a bit, then spoke to Sakharin. Where are we headed to? He asked, since they were moving along the edges of the Lagrana Mountains, and with his current condition and his old subordinates, being entangled with the humans was going to be almost impossible. Reuniting with the other clan members, my chief, then you can decide where we will be headed to. Chapter 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a week of the journey of traversing through the edges of the Lagrana Mountains, Shao Chen and his group arrived at a campsite. Tents made of different animal skins were scattered around the place, some bigger than the others and grander, and in the center is where the biggest and grandest tent was at. A tent made of fine Therian skin, its fine reddish and vibrant color, made it stand out among the dull-colored gray and brown tents in its surroundings. Looking around carefully, Shao Chen spotted a few more of its brethren, female orcs and still young ones. A system prompt notified him of a new total population of his people, which is at 814. This is what remains of the once great Archon tribe, which boasted a total number of around 11,000 able bodies, of which more than half of it were brave warriors. Now we are nothing but a shadow of our former glory after that damned warlock Rakashad decimated our numbers. Sakharin said with a sad tone. He was reminiscing about the past, the glory days of the Archon tribe where they were respected and feared by many, but now, they were driven away from their fertile ancestral lands and hunted by those that they have looked down upon before. What exactly happened? Xiao Qin can't help but ask if they had such a huge number of warriors, they should have been able to easily trample Rakkhashad into meat. Paste. He wondered what exactly happened. Balfurs, specifically like the ones that you have slain. He had many Balfurs to do his bidding. He captured many of us, mostly the young and pure women, and sacrificed them to his demon masters, gaining more power and command over the Balfurs. We hunted him relentlessly, but he was sly one, never showing his face and just commanded the Balfurs to confront us. One day, we pursued him far from the tribe. Little did we know he was luring us away and when we least expected it. He ravaged our tribe, killing many of our tribe members, even our chieftain, Erathan. My father, my sister, mother, and many of our warriors fell during that attack. When we returned after losing track of him, we were greeted with a devastated tribe. Corpses of both Balfurs and our brethren scattered everywhere. They did not spare even the still-growing ones. The brave chieftain took down 2 Balfur queens at the expense of suffering grievous wounds. At his last moments he made an oath, by the Archon tribe's honor and his name Erathan, chief of the Archons, that whoever kills that damned warlock will succeed his position as chieftain. What was more painful was that the warlock Rakkhashad was the chieftain's own brother. Losing in the right of succession, he succumbed to demons' temptations and delved into the dark side, secretly conducting live sacrifices to please his demon masters. When he was discovered by the chieftain, he exiled him since he didn't have the heart to slay his own brother, but that was his deepest regret. He muttered in his last moments that he should have ended him there and then instead of just exiling him. Xiao Chen wasn't able to speak. He was stunned. The story of the Archons was like a scripted story. A vengeful brother, who can't accept being overshadowed by his brother, succumbed to the dark side, then came back for vengeance. Now the Archons will have to depend on you to regain its former status and glory. Sakharan said, then went forward first to inform everybody of the new chieftain of the clan. At night they performed a ritual, making Xiao Chen the official chieftain and recognized by every Archon as their new leader. Making his way out of the tent, Xiao Chen was greeted by the chilly morning winds and the thin mist coming from the Lagrana mountains. He now had a tribe to lead. Many are now depending on his leadership for survival and he must not let them down, like he had a choice. A new mission was just issued to him by the system. Missions available. Missions * establish your territory. Reward 1000 points * train and build your first army, must comprise not less than 400 combatants. Reward 3000 points * win a battle with your army with less than 50% casualties. Reward 5000 points failure. Deduct 20,000 points. Host will experience the demon's curse for an entire day. Xiao Chen didn't know how to move forward with his new missions. Sure, orcs are natural-born warriors, but if they engage in a battle with their usual style, attaining less than 50% casualty was nigh impossible and the massive penalty for failure was not something he can ignore. Looking at the system, he noticed new features in the Army tab and Commander tab * Commander rank. Grunt Sergeant, upgradable, able to take command of a rabble, 10 orc warriors, Army morale. 98% Army cohesion. 20% Commander's prestige. 76% Commander's authority. 0% Commander skills. Battle Commander. Novice, upgradable, 10% chance for warriors under your command to execute your given commands perfectly. Morale boost. Basic, upgradable, 5% chance that warriors under your command will fight to the death as long as you are within 10-meter radius of them. Commander's share. Basic, upgradable, for every enemy that a warrior under your command kills, receive 1 point. * Army details. Trust. 92% combatants. 441 non-combatants. 373 assigned officers. None. Total number of subordinates. 814. The Army's trust and morale were all-time high, and he had enough prestige to command them, but with a very low cohesion and existent commander's authority, was a recipe for an inevitable defeat. So, Xiaoqian upgraded his rank to have better control of his army. He spent 1,000 points to upgrade to Grunt second lieutenant, allowing him to take charge of 50 men, 2,000 points to upgrade to Grunt first lieutenant to be able to take command of 100 men, then 5,000 points to raise it up to Grunt captain, allowing him to assume control of 500 men, 8,000 points quickly gone. Checking out the assigned officers feature, he found out that he can assign 4 combatant officers and 2 non-combatant officers to help him control his army. With his new rank as a Grunt captain, his commander's authority now is at full capacity, a full 100%. Sadly, though, the army cohesion remains the same. He must find a way to raise it up, or else their enemies will easily decimate his army. Xiaoqian started thinking, then finally had an enlightenment. What better way to raise an army's cohesion if not through training camps, the intense and hell-like training to make them united, he thought. He now had plans, a plan that his subordinates surely wouldn't like, but it is a sure way to increase his army's survival rate and effectivity in combat. He will have to play villain if he has to, like his old drill instructors and trainers. Rummaging through the scattered things inside the chieftain's tent, Xiaoqian finally found what he was looking for, an old tattered sheepskin that had a map drawn on it. Under his scrutinizing gaze, he finally had a general idea of the Orcish lands and the other areas that the orcs have explored. To the west, separated by the Lagrana Mountains, was the human kingdom of Thria, the elves to the northwest beyond the Kashinora forest. The east was a vast expanse of blue which could only mean an enormous body of water, maybe a sea or the ocean, and to the south was the burning sands represented by a huge swath of brown, and basing on its name and color representation, Xiaoqian can only think of one thing, a desert. Looking for a good place to settle at, he finally found a good place. A huge flatland near the burning sands, where there are no immediate orc tribes nearby nor any human settlement around. Their closest neighbor would be an orc tribe which was more or less a week to march from his chosen place. It had the burning sands and the Lagrana Mountains as its natural buffers, making it less likely to be visited by unwelcomed guests. With a clear destination, he went to inform Sakharin where they will be headed to. The sun was already up in the sky and the orcs were now awakening from a night of festivity, celebrating Xiaoqian becoming the new chieftain.